Good afternoon, everyone. It's Cassandra Williamson coming to you from Eastern Kentucky, right along West Virginia. Tug River separates the two states. And right up near, actually, it's near the corner, actually, of Kentucky and Virginia and West Virginia all coming together near there, kind of 10 miles from there, 15 miles, maybe, something like that from that corner. But anyway, so this is a beautiful place, beautiful part of the country. There's some amazing people here in this part of the world as well. And they are unlike, this is a deep red place, okay? It's deep red for sure. So me living as myself here in this part of the world, some would think would be tremendously dangerous or challenging or whatever. But I'm going to tell you, I'm not the only one here who's like me. There are others of us in this area as well. And I've had the opportunity to meet a few of them because I go out and do DoorDash. I get to meet people because I'm retired. I just go out and make a little extra pocket change, whatever. Gets me out of the house too, gives me a break. So, but I'm not the only one in this area. Others have come up to me and introduced themselves to me, which I find to be fascinating here. And they're living peaceful, happy lives here, right here, where I am in deep red Appalachia, which to most people around the world would seem to be, or at least in the country, would seem to be kind of an opposite. But the truth of the matter is, they're here. We are here. And people treat us with decency and respect here. And we do the same thing back. It's not just a mutually exclusive thing. None of us that I know of go around demanding that people treat us a certain way. We don't have expectations of how that should be. We let people be themselves, whether they agree with us or not, it doesn't matter, but that's what we do. And so, again, my name is Cassandra Williamson, and this is Midday. And so some of the things I wanted to talk about today were those very things right there. Some of the stuff that others have brought up. Erin Reed with Erin in the Morning brought this up in a thing this morning that I read from her, talking about the legacy media has failed us. That's true. They failed trans Americans and LGBT Americans. They failed them miserably. They have not supported overtly and with intensity us and our lives in opposition to those who are trying to erase us. Now, look, if you think I'm being hyperbolic about that, I don't know. I don't know how I can tell you otherwise, but you aren't listening to the same news sources that I have. That's apparently true. But I'm listening to Fox. I listen to Fox News. I watch them. This morning, I watched them go after trans Americans again. Yesterday, they went after them again. They'll go after them all day long. They're railing on this thing about the Supreme Court ruling that trans youth don't have a right to care. Not because they're trans youth, but because they're underage and the medical facility, what word am I looking for? The medical community is not standing up and saying, hey, look, this is actually wrong what you're doing to these people. So states do have the right to regulate a few things. That is for sure. We want them to be able to do that. But they have to be able to draw the line. And so far, this animus towards trans people seems to be just so deep rooted. It's kind of crazy. What is this? They have some kind of fetish for us or something? I don't know. Maybe they think we're into kink and they must be into kink. No, we're not. At least I'm not, that's for sure. And a lot of people I know aren't as well. Now, I know some who are, but that's on them. That's for them. But no. They've painted us all with this broad brush as if we're some kind of, a distinction that they don't want to see live in the public square. And it's just so crazy. So I've had Gemini doing a deep dive into why there's so much animus towards trans people in the country. And it's being fueled around the world by the United States. Yes, it is. You don't think so? All you have to do is go find any one of America's preachers who are going overseas, particularly into Africa or Europe over there where Viktor Orban's located or anything like that, or even into Russia, you'll find that the animus towards LGBT people and T people is off the scale, folks. We're the ones promoting it worldwide. That kind of anti-trans, that they're trying to make people think we don't have a right to be who we are. They're trying to tell people that there's no reason for us to exist because the science says this. But I'm going to tell you, the science does not say that. They're stuck in the 1950s in some kind of, I don't know, binary structure that just no longer exists now. As a matter of fact, I read a little thing from Megyn Kelly. I don't know, one of those right-wing people over there. And she was going after the APA, the American Psychological Association, because they had put out a post in opposition to the Supreme Court ruling that allowed Tennessee to discriminate against trans youth. This is a scientific body that has built up research that whether it supports it or not, they've got the research in there, they've done the work, and yet Megyn Kelly called them a bunch of buffoons. Why? Because, I don't know, maybe they use the scientific method to find it does work, it's medically necessary care for these people. We know that. And all the horror stories that they're pointing out all the time, they bring in one detransitioner after another, and there aren't that many of them. That's the thing. But let me just say this, and I'm going to be very clear about this. The people who detransition, and that's a horrible word to use, actually. They're still on their journey. They're transitioning along their particular journey to be who they want to be. If it happens to be that they want to do it this way, and then they change their mind and do it that way, that's fine. That's perfectly legit. That's what we're about, right? Those of us who would complain about such a thing? No. Don't need to be complaining about it. That's a legitimate part of anyone's personal journey for them to decide for themselves, and we have no right to interfere in that. The problem arises, though, whenever those people get used by right-wing media sources to amplify a message of hatred towards trans people and the care that we receive, the scientifically sound care that we receive. That's the problem with detransitioners out here talking about how wrong it was that they got certain treatment when they were growing up, or whatever care they got, or as somebody they thought somebody had affirmed them too much, not giving them an option to do otherwise. But look, that journey is an individual journey. It has no basis for being put in someone else's hands to let them decide for you. It's yours. If they want to go change around, that's perfectly fine. Gender and sex are not the same thing. We've known that for decades. Decades and decades and decades we've known that. And the two don't even have to be related, even though they are somewhat. But you know, whenever I see a detransitioner out there being used by Fox News or used by whomever over on the other side, then what I'm seeing is they have played this person to the hilt and tried to make them think that they had to go do this to become that, to do this. And Fox is just playing it along. But that person has a right to do whatever they want with their journey, right? Everybody, you agree with that? That's theirs. The challenge is that it becomes a public weapon used against the rest of us. You can't use one example or two examples or even 20 examples as a referendum on the rest of the community. Can't do that. That's not even scientific. That's not rational. But yet, that's what's happening on the right. The legacy media that Erin Reed was talking about this morning in her piece on Substack, I think it was. So they have not brought in put enough force behind supporting the rest of the community who is happy with who they are and who have been successful in life, who've done all kinds of things and been leaders in the military, all of this. Legacy media has failed in that regard, folks. They really failed this. And they keep turning away from it every time something comes along. I mean, you've got this whole week has been spent talking about the Supreme Court ruling that gave Tennessee the right to discriminate against trans youth. Over on the right side. But where's the outrage over on the left? Where is the intensity and the focus and energy on the left that rises up and says, enough of this? Come on, where is it? I don't know what's really going on. I know that the cycle of history is that way, that right now it is the conservatives' time to kind of lord it over everybody else. But that won't last. It will fail eventually. It will fall apart eventually. Probably pretty quickly, one would hope. But we know that this is one of those cycles and we have to get through it. But we also can't just yield the playground, yield the battlefield because someone else is winning right now. You can't yield the field for that. It may take another decade to straighten all this mess out, but we have yet to put together a rational, strategic plan to do so. I have seen nothing. If anybody wants to join me in helping do that, to move things around, fine, let's do it. We've got to start straightening this stuff out and coming up with a long-range plan to undo the damage that has been done by the anti-science, hateful people over on the right. Now, look, I want to just let me clarify one thing. I am not talking about Americans here. Well, I am talking about some Americans, but what I am not talking about middle of the country Americans right here where I am right now. These people definitely are over in the conservative side of things, but they voted that way, but they're still good human beings who respect people for who they are, especially if you are authentic in who you are, you represent yourself well, you aren't an affront to people whenever you go out and all this kind of thing. You don't, true, my existence and voice and all of this stuff does kind of raise some eyebrows, but that's fine. That's fine. It doesn't take long for people to realize that I'm just as another human like they are. Nothing wrong, nothing different, not a threat. I'm not trying to force myself on them. I'm not pushing my way into their places. No, I am me, and that's it. This is what a middle of America looks like. Middle America right here in this part of the country and flyover country. They aren't the ones who are hating on us. They are not the ones hating on trans people in this country. That hatred, that animus, it's coming from a few pontificators out there who've got their heads stuck somewhere up somebody else's butt, who think that they know what science is when in fact they didn't even study science in school. And there are some doctors out here though that are doing this. Now look, that Dr. Ethan Haim from down in Texas, the whistleblower from down there talking about trans healthcare. Well, this morning he was on Fox News. He was on Fox News this morning, literally smiling that the Supreme Court has now allowed Tennessee to discriminate against trans youth. Where does that kind of animus come from? What is it? Where does it come from? What's the source of this kind of stuff? Because it is not based in reality. It's not based in science either. And I don't care what you say about that. The science supports our existence. We've been here from the beginning of time, basically. We have been here in every culture on the planet. Not just today, but through time. We've been here. Different names, different things, different situations going on. That's fine. Yes. Yes. In every culture, every religion on this planet, we're there. And always have been. We're actually proof. I'm going to say this. This is just me saying this one out loud. This is not something that I've looked into very deeply at this point, but it seems to me as if we are proof that there is, in fact, diversity in the human genome. Otherwise, we would all look exactly alike. We're the proof that there is diversity in the human genome and the human condition and humans in general around the planet. But you don't even have to look at us to know that. I mean, if you just looked at all the other diverse factors that make up humanity, you know, from race, ethnicity, ideological differences, geographic differences, all these kind of things, all the differences that make this whole tapestry of humanity look so vibrantly colorful, full of life, differences, all of those things, then you will know that what you think you know of science, of genetics, is not, it is wrong. Especially since we know that all these other conditions can be borne out as well. The good and the bad. People come into this world with good characteristics and traits, and some with bad characteristics and traits that present as illnesses or sicknesses or some kind of disease. We know that those are there. That's just the way these things work, folks. That's science. That's the genetics of it. Our existence is just another part of that human diversity. Always will be, always has been. You can't legislate us out of existence. You can't shove us into the closet again. Some of us are going deliberately back into the closet, and some communities and some legacy media and some corporations and businesses around the country are backing up and kind of withdrawing from their support for this tapestry of humanity that includes us. They're backing off from it. But we can't let them. We've got to do everything we can to make sure people are standing with us through all of this. And we need to start stirring up that righteous anger, that intensity. It needs to be there again, because right now we're on the losing side of that. And as long as this administration remains in power, which is not going to last much longer in terms of electoral process, we know that. But as long as they remain in power, they're going to go after removing trans people from everything. They just ordered California to remove any reference to gender out of their PrEP program, not the PrEP in terms of HIV stuff, but PrEP in terms of educational standards. They just ordered California to remove theirs. They have 60 days to take away anything that has to do with gender ideology, as he call it. And I hate that term, because we are not an ideology. We are right here in your face every day, all the time. Okay, let me see what the chat box has to say down here. Let's see. Live and let live, unfortunately. Let me put this up here. This is from a friend down in cotton picking land. Live and let live, unfortunately, is just a forgotten phrase. Yes, it is. It used to be, and by the way, that's a good point, because it used to be that was the central focus of Republicans and conservatives. Live and let live. They were more independent thinking than they are ideologically driven today, like they are today. Live and let live. Here in Kentucky, people live and let live. And I'm sure it's the same way in a lot of other communities around this country, in the middle of the country. Look, I traveled around the country a number of years ago and visited all the lower 48 states. I took a whole 6 months and did that. And I never found the animus that so many on the public side of the right are telling me is there. People just want to live and let live. Yeah, there's some wackos out there who get carried away and do stupid crap. Absolutely. But as of what I saw and what I am seeing in real time right here, people just want to live and let live. But the leadership over here, the people driving the narrative over on the right side, the conservative side of things, or the Trumpism side of things, they don't care about minorities at all in this country. They don't.